special by how quickly he would respond to emails.
Yes.
Oh, did he respond to emails? He made us feel so special. Well, he responded to one too many emails from Paula Broadwell, apparently. But I don't give a damn about that. What I care a hell of a lot more about is the media and how they were so besmitten by General Petraeus. He would respond to my emails. I liked him so much. He was so special to me. King David. So Michael Hastings goes on CNN. Now, he's a contributor to the Young Turks on Current. And he went and brought his particular brand of ass-kicking to Piers Morgan's show. Let's see how that turned out.
Essentially, the media has played a role in protecting David Petraeus and promoting David Petraeus and mythologizing David Petraeus. And we saw it here tonight. General Kimmett, who was a spokesperson in Baghdad, who was a roommate of Petraeus, who was involved in one of the biggest debacles in recent foreign policy history, is on TV, defending David Petraeus without actually addressing the real problems with David Petraeus' record. A number of other journalists who were actually covering David Petraeus were raising those concerns. You might not get that from someone like Barbara Starr at CNN, who essentially is a spokesperson for the Pentagon in many ways.
For the pentagram?
Oh, damn.
Why
He's hitting the two guys on his left and right, or both generals?
Pentagram.
Including General Kimmett, the guy he was talking about.
You guys practice out of a pentagram?
And they're both like stone cold, like, what is happening? We're on television. Nobody's giving us oral.
Oh, what?
I don't get this guy.
Without question, a lot of Pentagon claims.
Look, there's very few journalists left in this country, and Michael Hastings is one of them. And he writes unflinchingly about the Pentagon. And when he did about General Stanley McChrystal, and Stanley McChrystal had to step down because of the piece that Michael Hastings wrote, which was totally true. And to BuzzFeed and Rolling Stone has passed away. He was involved in a car crash last night or early this morning at 4:25 a.m. here in Los Angeles. It was a single-person accident. Witness describes his car going at a very fast pace and then crashing, obviously, and as you can see, crazy in the press, which is two different camps. One is Michael Hastings killed, of course, at 4:30 in the morning in a car crash. And one camp is, it's obviously a conspiracy. The FBI killed him, Obama killed him, the government killed him. But you don't know anything yet. How could you possibly know that?
In Los Angeles, this morning she has some new information into what Hastings was working on just before he died in a fiery car explosion. Now, of note, the Hastings article is set to come out posthumously in a couple of weeks, we have learned. Good morning, Kim. Nice to see you this morning.
Morning. Thank you.
So you have new information about what Mr. Hastings was working on.
Yeah, I believe we have some sound on tape here from his wife on CNN earlier this week.
Okay, yeah, she made an appearance, Michael Hastings' widow. See if we can roll that.
I have no doubt that he was pursuing a hot story. He always had at least 5 hot stories going. That was Michael.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I believe, the context of the discussion here is that Michael was working on a number of stories on now CIA Director John Brennan. When he was the czar of counterterrorism for President Obama, he obviously was the architect of a lot of the drone strikes, Terror Tuesday, some of these issues. Well,
okay, so here's the emails. Now, this is from Hastings' colleague, correct? You got this from one of his co-workers.
Yes, at Project
And
BAM.
explain who Mr. Burton is, please.
Mr. Burton is the now president of Stratfor, which is a major defense contractor for the U.S. government.
Okay, and here is the email that says Brennan is behind the witch hunts of investigative journalists learning information from inside the Beltway sources, and it goes on to say, note there is specific tasker from the White House to go after anyone printing materials negative to the Obama agenda. And this is from a gentleman, you say, that has defense contracts in Washington?
Yes, indeed he does. Was directed towards Mr. Brennan, which prompted San Diego 6 and myself to read when it comes out in Rolling Stone.
It should be pointed out that Mr. Hastings' widow did make a television appearance saying that any suggestion that this was intended, his death was intended, is not correct, that his death was a tragic, just a tragedy, that there was no malfeasance.
Mysterious death of award-winning journalist Michael Hastings. Hastings is best known for a Rolling Stone article that led to the resignation of Afghanistan Commander General Stanley McChrystal.
Is there? You saw him?
I did not see anybody that it's gone in.
Too. iPhones, iPads, Android devices taking video from their cameras and listening with their microphones. We should be worried if they're being used against non-intelligence targets. We should be worried against if they're being used against Americans. WikiLeaks says there's one CIA hacking operation called Weeping Angel, Samsung Smart TV. These leaks are incredibly damaging to the ability of our intelligence people to do the job that they're supposed to do. According to WikiLeaks, the CIA explored the possibility of hacking into the software of modern cars with potentially deadly results. This can let you do a whole lot of things, from playing the music to taking control of the car entirely and crashing it if you want to assassinate somebody. The documents released by WikiLeaks have not been authenticated by...
Nothing untoward in the Michael Hastings story, which is, of course, incredibly possible, right? Even removed from that story, this facts that Richard Clarke is giving us is amazing, and it affects all of us. So what is it? Let me explain. He says, there's reason to believe that intelligence agencies for major powers, including the United States, know how to remotely seize control of a car. Whoa, hold on. We didn't know that. Why is this not the biggest revelation in a long, long time? So again, putting Hastings' situation aside for a second, so they can seize control of any of our cars? And what if you have, there's 1.5 million people in the intelligence community. I don't know how many of them have access to this kind of power, but I assume not that many, but a decent amount. How about if they got an ex-wife or a guy they hate? Such things as cause acceleration when the driver doesn't want acceleration, to throw on brakes when the driver doesn't want the brakes on, to launch an airbag. You can do some really highly destructive things now through hacking a car, and it's not that hard. Now, look, I had read similar things, but it was on some blog somewhere, and I thought, well, maybe yes, maybe no, right? This is Richard Clarke. He was our top counterterrorism advisor. He had every piece of information available. But my rule has always been, you don't knock down a conspiracy theory until you can prove it wrong. And in the case of Michael Hastings, so he is specifically talking about this case. In the case of Michael Hastings, what evidence is available publicly is consistent with a car cyber attack. And the problem with that is you can't prove it. In fact, he's probably going to get a lot of heat for saying this, but he's saying it anyway. I don't know if he knows anything more than we know. But even this is incredibly troubling. Furthermore, he says, I think you'd probably need the very best of the U.S. government intelligence or law enforcement officials to discover it. But now, in this case, unfortunately, those are among the different people that people suspect.
Quickly ruled. Then yesterday, we learned that hours before his death, Hastings sent a cryptic email to his friends and associates saying that the feds were investigating him and that he was on to a big story. Sergeant Joe Biggs is one of the friends who received that chilling email, and he joins us live. Sergeant, thank you for being here, and thank you for your service. So you knew Michael Hastings, and I know that this raised alarm bells for you when you heard that he was killed. Why do you question whether this was truly an accident?
It's the fact, the way that the other times that we've spoken before, and this email I got, it was just very panicked, and it didn't seem like something normally we would talk about. And I just felt a gut feeling, something didn't feel right.
Mm-hmm. But the police say it's an accident. They looked into it. They said, look, he was driving fast. It was 4:30 in the morning. It was dark. Lost control of the car, went through a red light, hit a tree.
Well, his friends and family, they know him. Everyone says he drives like a grandma. So that right there doesn't seem like something that he would be doing. I mean, he had a lot of friends and family that cared about him. He had a good life to live. There's no way he would be acting erratic like that and driving that out of control.
What do you think is going on here? I mean, because we talked about this a couple of times just because it's getting so much attention on the internet, and people who are close to Mr. Hastings are still raising questions about the LAPD and their conclusions that this was an accident. What is the alternate theory, that he was murdered, that he was intentionally targeted by someone?
I don't know that. I just know that from the email to hours later dying, it's just not a coincidence like that. Things don't add up. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered. I contacted by email Mercedes today, asked them if it's normal for their cars to blow up to that extent, for if the engines fly out on a normal basis. I mean, these are the real questions we need to ask.
And what of obviously he was investigating a couple of high-profile cases. He was looking into, he said, Jill Kelly, who was connected with the whole David Petraeus and General Clark. Go ahead.
His wife today said that that's definitely not true, that he was investigating into Jill Kelly.
Michael Hastings' wife says he was not investigating that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, what was he investigating, as far as you know, that would have caused any consternation whatsoever by someone?
CIA, but from what he said, or one of the things he said is it was going to be the biggest story yet.
You know how people are going to react to this. They're going to say that the tinfoil hat people think the government killed this journalist.
In that one day, there have been a number of misleading headlines that we will get to. But before we get to the headlines, I want to read you directly from the coroner's report, where it indicates that there were some drugs found in his system. However, he was not intoxicated at the time of the crash. Therefore, when you are writing an article about this and you are writing a headline for the article, you probably shouldn't lead with there were drugs in his system, because that's going to imply that that's what led to his car accident. Now, according to the coroner's report, toxicology shows a small amount of amphetamine in the blood, consistent with possible intake of methamphetamine many hours before death, unlikely to have intoxicative effect at the time of the accident. Marijuana was present in the blood, but mostly in the form of its metabolite, indicating intake hours earlier. All other drugs were negative. Now, I should also note, you hear the word amphetamine and you immediately think, oh my God, he was smoking meth. Well, amphetamine is found in Adderall, it's found in Ritalin, it's found in nasal spray, in some decongestants that you can buy over the counter. So Doesn't matter. The media took that and they decided to stretch it and make it seem like, oh, he's smoking Breaking Bad style meth.
Yeah, all right. Now, just quick note of emphasis.
Huffington Post even had a headline similar to that. Michael Hastings had relapsed into drug use at the time of his death, coroner says.
Before you keep going, let's just read two important things. These are not sentences that we picked up in the middle of the story, where it would be fair to say, look, among the different things that happened, they noticed trace amounts of this, of pot, etc., in his system, and maybe something related to, I mean, it's amphetamine for whatever it's related to, right? These are the headlines. This is what happened. And remember that most people only read the headline. They don't even read the story, right? So every headline they see is drug addict.
Fox.
I got to clarify that. I don't know why in the world his brother said that. But he said, I thought I would find cocaine in his room. But you didn't. So why did you mention that? And why is every press article running with it as if he smoked? Or, I mean, I don't even know what you do with cocaine. It's obviously snorted cocaine or did that drug I've never even heard of. There's no evidence to that effect. None.
And look, there is a possibility that the brother gave an interview and the interview was misinterpreted in